Okay, in your journals, this is topic number 3, rounding decimals. You're going to go to the next, after your 2, go to your next clean sheets of pages in your notebook, rounding decimals, number 3. The first thing I want you to write at the very top of your journal is this little saying that I think goes perfect with what we're doing. First thing you're going to write is 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, you're going to up the score. The key things to remember in this is 4, less, rest. That means if it's 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, leave it alone. If it's 5 more, take it up. You only take it up one number. So if it was a 5, goes to 6. If it was 6, goes to 7. And so on till you get to 9. 9 goes back down to 0. All right, another rule, 2 rules I want you to remember, is any number before the underlined number you keep. So numbers before underlined number, keep. So for example, if I look at this number right here, 424 thousandths, I see before the 2 that's underlined, I see a 4, a 0, and a decimal. So when I rewrite my new number, I'm going to keep the 0, keep the decimal, keep the 4. We stop at the underlined number to see what we do next. Any number after the underlined number becomes a 0. So number after underlined number becomes 0. And with both of these, I can put an S. That doesn't look like an S. Because there can be more than one number after the underlined number. Now, if I follow this in a rule pattern between the 3 rules that we have, I would say this one is first, this one is second, and this one, the one on the bottom, is third. And I'll show you why. Alright, this first number we have here is 6 1/10. Now, after my 10th place, I don't see any number here. But we all know that what number is behind or in front of any number? The leader and the last person. If you said an invisible 0, you are correct. So I can actually add a 0 here. What I like to do, especially makes it a lot easier for my step 3, I like to circle the number that is after the underlined number. Even draw an arrow if you'd like. Because you need the number that's inside of here to follow this one, this rule. So rule number 2, I'm going to put a number 2 because I'm going to follow rule number 2 to figure out what happens to the underlined number. Okay, so the first thing we know is we keep any number before the underlined number. First rule, any number before the underlined number you keep. I'm going to keep my 6. Keep my decimal. I'm now going to look at what's circled. I have a 0. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, up the score. This is 0, follows the first sentence, so I'm going to leave this one alone. If you want, you can put your invisible 0 back. You don't have to. All right, let's go into this one right here. I'm going to circle the number behind the underlined number to know what happens to my 2. Following rule number 1, any number before the underlined number you keep. So I'm keeping the 0, the decimal, and the 4. I'm going to use what's circled to follow rule number 2. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, up the score. This is a 4, so my 2 is going to stay. Following rule number 3, any number or numbers after the underlined number becomes a 0. Well, that's where my circle is. So I know I'm just bringing that circle down. Becomes a 0. So you can see. 6 and 99 thousandths. I'm going to keep my 6, keep my decimal. The 9 is who is circled to figure out what happens to my 0 who is underlined. Rule number 1, any number before the underlined number you keep. We did that. Rule number 2, I use it for the circled number. 9 belongs in, finally, the second one. 5 or more, up the score. But I'm not going to turn this into a 0 just yet. I have to figure out what comes after 0. Perfect. 1. 1 stays down here. Rule number 3, any number after the underlined number becomes a 0. So that means this 9, I just keep that circle. Becomes a 0. This other 9 becomes a 0. Rule number 1, any number before, I almost said after, before the underlined number you keep. Okay, here's underline. Keep the 2, keep the decimal, keep the 5, keep the 0, keep the 9. Sliding down. I'm going to circle this 5, figure out what happens to my underlined, and use rule number 2. I see a 5. I'm going to follow the second sentence. 5 or more, up the score. You up this number. Up me. This underlined number is going to become a 6. 5, 6. After this, the 0 is going to come down and become a 0. Your turn. Let me give you going to give you 3. Be ready to discuss these with your classmates in the morning. Okay? I'll leave those. You can see right here. I'll write them right here. So your turn. These are the numbers you're going to round. 6 and 1300ths. The 1 is underlined. Let's do 183 and 92 hundredths. The 3 is underlined. And your last one, 32 and 65 hundredths. The 6 is underlined. Thank you for watching your video on rounding decimals. I will see you tomorrow.